It seems that reports of my survival have been greatly exaggerated.
This isn't possible.
Oh, I assure you, it is. How? Not how. Why? You were never meant to come here.
We have our orders. Leave the city, radio command from outside the storm wall. They send in the cavalry, we go home.
Hello there, Sir from 17 once again. This is my Spec Ops The Line FUBAR Difficulty video walkthrough. This is chapter 11, and this is Alone. And as you can tell by our lovely walk, shit has hit the fan. The proverbial has gone splashing, and it's one of those interesting moments where you have to make a choice coming up, and the choice is not the most far-reaching of them, but it is a little bit of redemption or vengeance, depending on how you want to play it. I personally am not going to go through with the choice. I'm going to ignore it. It's not because I want to watch a man burn to death, which is probably an extremely vicious way to die. But I've already shot the guy, and there's an achievement for shooting an animal. It's like an impala or something, or like a caribou. I'm not entirely sure what it's called. And there's one just up ahead here. There's one at the beginning of the game, and then there's this one. And you only have one shot in your magnum. So, you know, I needed the achievement, so I thought, why not shoot this instead of the dude who's about to burn to death? But this section of the game as well does one of the things I love the most in games, which they don't do enough, and they haven't really got to the point where it's refined enough. I love toil on clothing. I love when it tears, I love when it rips, I love when you go through 7 different, stages of just degrading uniforms in games, and it's something that gives the illusion that you've been through, an arduous task, an arduous journey, and it's almost like a new chapter to each area, just to get a little bit more fucked up, like the Die Hard thing where Bruce Willis starts off, he's got no shoes on, he's got no socks on, he's just got his trousers, he's, making fists with his toes, he's got his lovely white vest on, and then by the end of it, there's no vest, he's completely covered in blood, his foot is all bandaged because it's filled with glass, and he's just having a really terrible day, and to top it off, he's got some duct tape on his back that's got Christmassy symbols on it, so, it's just the perfect progression, in my opinion, and I like stuff like that. And one of the first games that did it all that well was Prince of Persia, the remake on the PlayStation. Because every so often you'd get to a certain part of the game where the prince would pull his sleeve off or rip a part of torn rags. And I love stuff like that. I love that attention to detail. And one game that I think could do it really well, but I can't remember it really doing much with that, is Uncharted, because, your clothing gets wet on that game, your clothing sags on your body, it looks really good, the tech behind it's brilliant. Now, if we could just get it so that it gets, gradually more fucked up, it'd be the perfect combination of tech and, artistic ability. But this sequence here, guys, those first few baddies are pretty tough because you don't have a lot of ammo in your magnum, so you want to just make your shots count, don't get too aggressive, and immediately swap out for a gun with more ammo in it. The sequence coming up is only difficult if you rush it and if you pop out of cover too much, because you die so fast on this difficulty it's not even funny. But for the most, this next area should be simple. The turret section, I think personally, is a little bit challenging because you have to do about 4 or 5 minutes worth of constant gameplay, and your team can die. And unfortunately, this is one of those games where you cannot really control the probability of your team dying. Every so often, sometimes the game just decides to screw you a little bit and you get unlucky. But for the most, for instance, this shootout here is quite simple because everybody's looking at your team, they're not looking at you. Obviously, that guy up there, they're definitely looking at you, so be very careful with those. But the joy of this game is literally that you're a one-man army, as you are in most third-person shooters. This one is, you're definitely a little bit more fragile in this one, but it's also a case of you have a team in Spec Ops, and your team is so powerful. Like, your team breaks the game in some respects, but it doesn't break it in a bad way, because it makes it empowering. It makes you feel like having a team is worthwhile, as opposed to, completely hating them for the full game. And you will have moments where you do hate them when they keep going down and they prove to be nothing but bullet sponges and idiotic bullet sponges at that. But they do come in handy because they are a distraction. And anything that stops the AI from focusing on you is a lifesaver. And just be careful here because the turrets, once again, they do stupid damage. The one thing I'm conscious of right now is there's going to be some enemies spawned to my left, and as long as they don't get the jump on me, I should be fine. But the rest of this is all pretty simple stuff. But yeah, clothing and outfits, I do like that type of stuff, and I don't think games take it far enough. And I've mentioned this before on various videos, because you know I've done over 1,800 videos, so a lot of the times I'm reiterating on points I've already made. But for instance, Arkham City and Batman Arkham Asylum, two games that, as they stand, are very good games. I do think that City is weaker than Asylum because it's less focused and it's more ambitious, but that's just, the victim of the industry. But Batman never gets truly fucked up, and I always found that really sad, because I would have liked it by the end of the game to have literally no cape left, just, a tattered curtain down one side of his body, and full-on exposed knees and thighs and stuff where the suit is so torn and so butchered. Even the mask, like only have one of the spikes on top of the cowl. Just really messed up stuff. Because that's what I like. I like to look like you've been through a war. I like to feel the struggle on the character. And a lot of new, games nowadays are definitely trying to make you feel the struggle. For instance, this one is very innovative when it comes to that type of stuff, because the characters, their voices change to reflect the intensity of what's happening. You've gone from being professional soldiers to being human beings in an impossible situation, and realizing you're probably not going to come out of it alive. And it doesn't work in some responses, because you can go from the guy being like, "We're gonna fucking die," to immediately, killing everybody, and then he suddenly goes, "Area clear." So it's like, "We're gonna fucking area clear," and it doesn't really work. But it's a cool idea what they've tried to do nonetheless. And games nowadays are showing the struggle in different ways. For instance, in Uncharted, where Drake is staggering and he puts his hand against the wall, where he shows these animation moments of weakness that really add that subtlety and that extra level of quality to a game. Some games don't do it very well. Some games try and do it, and it kind of comes across as blasé, but it's a delicate balance, and if they do it right, it can be so good. A word of warning here, make sure you clear out as many dudes as you can across this path before you go over, because the time it takes you to land and then get in cover is enough time to die. And the reason I say this is because I did die, so trust me when I when I warn you of the troubles of that. But just exploit your camera, be a cheeky bastard, as I like to do, because that's one of the things about these games. When people ask questions along the lines of how do you do this, how do you do that, how did you get good at this, how did you get good at that, you can't really think of it like that, guys. You need to just think of it as a problem. Think of it like a maths equation. And I know for me that's kind of ridiculous because I hate maths, but it's problem solving. That's all it is. You have a certain situation you need to overcome, and a lot of the times the answer is quite simple. You're too busy playing the game to notice it. So sometimes you have to just take a step back and think, if this was really me in this situation, what would I do to get through it? Because in real life, I don't think any of us would be running forward guns blazing, because that's how you die, and that's how it works. So just play like hide and seek when you were a kid, when your life depended on it, or when you were running away from the police, if you ever did that, if you were as bad as I was when I was a kid. But a lot of that stuff really translates into games and stuff, because a lot of people just say, "Oh, it's just a game." Yeah, it is just a game, but it also teaches you motor functions. It teaches you hand-eye coordination. It teaches you problem solving, deductive reasoning. It teaches you a lot more than people want to give it credit. And this bit's bullshit. I hate this bit. There should be an epilepsy warning on this game, because I don't have epilepsy and I was dancing a bit during this, because it doesn't make any sense. It's like, yes, we're supposed to be having some kind of, psychological breakdown. This could be just symptoms of our psychosis. But why is it blinking? It's such a terrible section. My tips are simple. Throw as many grenades as you've got. Blind fire. Do not come out of cover. And if he comes past your cover, you're probably dead. But look at it. I'm having trouble looking at it now, because it's why would they do this? This is so egregious. It's just like, try not to shit your pants. Try not to shit your pants. I feel like I should be admitted. Just goodness me, such a bad... And it's getting faster now. It's getting faster. Getting faster. Go on, testing our synapses. There's no wonder booklets have gone from, you know, really creative and imaginative narratives and bits of exposition to, you may die if flashing lights proceed to blind your face. But when he dies, for some reason that fixes the shitty electronics in this building, and then you can swap out whatever gun you've got for the saw, and then go around the room picking up ammo to fill the saw, because this gun, easily the most useful gun on the game. But as I was saying, there was a recent story that mentioned a town in Connecticut burning violent video games because, just like witches before it, you know, books, controversial books, and misunderstood music. There's always a scapegoat in the media for people to blame violence on, and especially over the Christmas period where there's been a lot of terrible stuff happens. There's been the shootings in America, and I say shootings not because the big one had numerous victims, but because a couple days before it there was one in Portland that nobody even seems to notice because the one that followed it was so much more horrific. And I was going to do a commentary with my girlfriend about the delusion that is the Second Amendment and this right to bear arms. And the first thing I'm going to say is I do have a lot of American viewers, American people that enjoy my stuff, and this is not a dig at your heritage, this is not a dig at your personal beliefs, this is just where I stand on it from pretty much an objective perspective, because I have never seen a real gun outside of the context of an airport or in a foreign country where, you know, like when I went to France there was the armed police walking around like badasses with Glocks on the hips, but I've never seen a real gun. I've seen shotguns, I've seen air rifles, my dad owns an air pistol which fires pellets, and that's the closest I've come to real guns in my existence. And because of that, you know, I don't understand this notion that I should have the right to carry a potentially fatal weapon around with me wherever I go. And I will never understand that, because to me, if you have a problem, if you remove the catalysts in that problem, you generally don't have as much of a problem. And our culture, our biggest, you know, threat for things like that is knives, because knives are so easy to get to, and because the guns aren't such this massive thing in society, knives tend to be when it comes to violence, when it comes to gangs, things like that. And don't get me wrong, there are weapons, there are gun-related crimes, but they're kind of rare, because when people use guns, there's generally two types of people. There's the gangster, the drug dealing, the mobster wannabe type guys that end up having a bit of a firefight, and it's generally, we don't hear too much about that. Or it's a 10-year-old kid on a bike in an estate in Manchester that's doing a drive-by because he's seen too many fucking Scorsese films. Like, that is literally the two things that happen. But bringing it back to something that actually means something, the right to bear arms was written in a time where every single thing that existed was trying to kill and take away your family, take away your land, take away everything you owned. And it was in such an unhospitable area of the world that you had to be able to defend yourself, and you had to be able to defend yourself without the threat of repercussion from the law, because a lot of the times it might have been the law that were coming for you. There's a whole bunch of different circumstances that make that, you know, particular ideology extremely worthwhile in that time period, because you needed it. And, you know, I like to think we've moved on since then. I like to think that we've progressed since, you know, getting scalped and having your entire family flayed and hung from the signs on the front of your farm. Don't get me wrong, we still have the capacity for such violence, because that's just the type of animals we are. But this notion that even now, in a somewhat, you know, illusion towards sophistication with society, that we have to all carry a gun, or we have to all have the ability or the choice to carry a gun, to me just seems just absolutely ridiculous. Because the biggest problem with carrying a gun is you want to use it. And a lot of people will be like, it's our right to carry it, and it's better to have one, you know, and never use it or never need it, or to need it and not have one, and all the other popular arguments. But like, you cannot deny the gun culture that has come from that ruling is pretty much the main reason why these shootings are allowed to happen, because they've completely desensitized and disenfranchised people towards the dangers of firearms. And I personally think that the best way to understand something is to learn about it, which is why I don't understand why people get so defensive about sex education in schools, because knowledge is definitely power, and to some extent knowledge of weapons is power, and the knowledge of how to use them responsibly and to respect them is fine. But to go into a shop and have the ammunition or the guns next to the fucking dog food and stuff, it's a society gone too far. And it needs to change. There's no ways it can't change, because these things are just going to keep on happening. Because the biggest, facilitator in this entire situation of these events is the news. Because they never show you the important stuff. They never dwell on the things that we should know about. They dwell on the misery. They dwell on the stuff that sells. They tell you all about these fucking lunatics that would rather shoot children than anything that would even remotely fire back at them, because they're all cowards. And they glorify it for the next person to come and try and top the fucking kill streak, and that's the biggest problem. They get this attention, and it tells these people that might not have the biggest grasp on reality that, if they do a similar thing, that they'll get the same thing as well. And it's just madness. I don't understand it at all. And like, one thing for me, as far as the gun argument goes, because I'm not against guns, I'm really not. I wish my country did have them for the benefit of the fact that I like them. I think guns are awesome, and I do agree that, it's not necessarily guns that kill people, it is the person behind the weapon. But it's so much easier to kill someone when you've got, readily available weapons. Go into a bank, open an account, and boom, there's your firearm. It's almost a joke at this moment in time, a stereotype, because it is that bad, it's that egregious. But the argument that I would put forward is if they want and they're attached to the guns so much, make the guns fine. Give them all the guns they want. Just make it so that they don't sell ammunition. You can't find ammunition. And, only the people who really want to be assholes and really want to mess some shit up or do something can get access to the ammo. See, to me that would be a much better solution than selling it in the American equivalent to fucking Tesco. It's just, I don't really understand it, guys. And violence is a really funny topic when it comes to anything. Burning violent games is not going to stop violence. Do you know why, guys? Because violence existed before those violent video games did. Those violent video games exist because we take the things that we see, we take the things that we fear or we enjoy, and then we portray them in fiction. And it's just like the Bill Hicks gag, you know what I mean? Pornography wasn't first, the erection was first, and thus we created pornography, because it was a response to a need that had existed a lot longer than the media that followed it. And it's just political quicksand. It really is, especially the gun stuff. You mention anything about being anti-gun in America, you might as well kiss your political career goodbye, because there's too much of that country that just fucking loves the yee-hi and don't give a shit freedom nonsense. But thanks for watching, guys. I do apologise if that got a little bit too deep too quickly, but it came out of nowhere, and I meant it with love. So you take care now.